When I came into office in 2011, and no fault of anybody in particular, but there were a lot of things lacking in this community. Infrastructure, everything from plow trucks to mechanisms to clean the sidewalks, a lot of problems. We've spent the last 7.5 years rectifying all those things that have been neglected for so long. And again, like I said, it was nobody's fault in particular. It's just the way the economy went. There were many factors involved in that. To say what we plan to do in the future, you know, there's a lot of different answers I could give for that, but the primary one is, and it all is contingent on what happens from May 8th on. If I survive the recall, and I pray I do, I'm hoping that we can put all of this political division aside and get back to being a community and start working on the things that actually benefit the citizens of this community. We've spent so much time, so many dollars, so many hours. You know, when I was first elected, I had no idea what the job really was going to consist of. I was a coffee shop politician like many of us are, and I kind of got to the point where it was time to either put up or shut up. And so I was insistent on getting involved in the politics at whatever level I thought I could accomplish. My assumption was at that time that anything that affected the well-being of this community and the citizens that live in it, I was going to stick my fingers into that and see what I could do to make it better, change it, fix it if it was broken, leave it alone if it wasn't. My motto in the village office is let's run government at the speed of business. Because the first thing I realized was that government was extremely slow. It's a very slow grinding wheel of progress. And there's reasons for that, but there's also ways to stay on top of these things and push them forward at a much faster speed. When I got in, there were just shelves and shelves and shelves of plans that everybody had made. And as elected officials came and went, those ideas kind of came and went with them. So my objective was to take all those great ideas and plans off the shelf, look at them, find which ones were still viable for today, and start applying them. And that's really our plans for the future. There's a lot of really good ideas that have been accumulated by past individuals that were in these elected positions. A lot of great ideas. But we just need the wherewithal and the community involvement to make these come to fruition. Like I said about the Herb Lumber Building, that building had sat there empty for 5-6 years, I believe, maybe longer. And I believe it would still be sitting there today, you know, but Penny Hill and I, who was the manager at the time, and another individual from Traverse City Chamber of Commerce took it upon ourselves to drive down and meet with John Herb. And on a dare, that man threw the gauntlet down. He told me, and these were his words, you guys, coming from an outsider looking in, said, Jeff, I've done business in that community for decades, and I don't believe you're going to be able to accomplish a thing. And we argued about that. And so he threw the gauntlet down as a dare and said, you can have that property for $65,000, but I don't believe you can get the money to do that. And so 9 months later, it was a unanimous vote on behalf of the council to write a cashier's check, and we bought that property. And then obviously the building was tore down. Those are the type of things we want to do for the future. We can only do so much. You know, we can all say, I'm going to do whatever I can to bring businesses here. You create an environment that's conducive to entrepreneurs and business owners to want to come here. Outside of that, you can bring them here. You can't make them successful. They have to do that themselves. I hear lots of ideas and thoughts and questions in the grocery store, the gas station, wherever. But the place for that is really bringing it into the public arena and asking full board councils and getting that question or that desire for information into a committee where it can be looked at closely. And the community is welcome to participate in those committee meetings, because this is your community. We're not the gods of this universe. We're implements in a tool shed there to be used by the community members. While we're working on these recall issues, we could be doing something that's actually constructive for the community. You know, you have to look at time and application here, and there's been an enormous amount of resources being distracted for other issues. With all the bad press that's been going on here in Kalkaska, some of those investors, and I will say this because I got it straight from the horse's mouth, we've lost up to as close as $30 million in possible investment here in the village of Kalkaska since all this publicity has started over Facebook posts, Trump sign, and all the rest of that. And that's too bad. After the Trump sign wouldn't come down, and I wouldn't apologize for the other issues that came up, they decided to tear into whatever they could and take everything that was decent and kind and paint it with a black paintbrush and make it ugly. And that's my opinion, and I believe it's true. It stayed up because, in part, I didn't like the manner in which they were asking me to take it down, and I was being stubborn about it. Was it worth it in hindsight? No, it wasn't, but I never expected it to blossom into stalking my Facebook page and finding things that they thought were insulting and derogatory either. You know, you can't predict the future. You think you're making a stand on a particular issue, and it turns into something completely different. It was a huge learning curve for me. But again, if I had to blame it on anything, I'd say I'm pig-headed sometimes. And if I could take it all back at this point in the game, probably. I've done the garage doors for the village of Kalkaska and all the other municipalities here in the village for over 25 years. Never been a problem. We always did it at a great discount to the community. That was kind of like my contribution. Some of these jobs I saved close to $2,000 per job, knocked off the cost, and that savings gets passed on to the citizens of this community, including myself. You know, these are all tax dollars that we're saving. My job, I thought, was a certain thing when I was elected, and it turned out it was something different, and what that was changing the way this community views itself. I heard an elected official back several years ago make a speech, and he meant nothing by it, and I wasn't offended by it. But he had said, this is a low to moderate income community, and I don't see that changing over the next 20 to 25 years. And that just took the wind out of me to hear somebody say that, because I have a much grander vision for this community than that. I say the possibilities for Kalkaska is endless. But again, that's always contingent upon the community itself, you know, changing the way the community views itself, in my view, is paramount. And so that's kind of the beginning of that. That was the whole idea behind Railroad Square. If we could get that ugly old building down, create something there, some type of a public square that had eye appeal, but also provide the means for all these fractured entities, the township, the village, Kiwanis, Rotary, all these other entities. We still have some issues with property and land. We've been redesignating commercial to industry, trying to create an environment to allow some of these industries to come in. So I'm hoping that once the dust settles on that, and there is truly a demand here with people that can and will, because that's a twofold answer, can and will buy houses. We're building an invitation when we invest in this community to tell others, this is a good place to live, it's worth investing here, please come, we'd love to have you. You know, this is your community. What is it that you want to invest in it? You know, for me, that number's infinity if I'm getting the things I'm paying for. I want a nice community. I want nice sidewalks. I want the safety of knowing if my wife wants to go out and walk around the block, that she's going to walk around the block and be safe doing it. What is it worth to you guys to have adequate policing to ensure the safety of not only ourselves, but of our children, our grandchildren, our property? This is your community. It's your police cars, it's your police officers, it's your DPW, it's your plow trucks. Everything we have belongs to you. It belongs to the citizens of this community. The goal in policing is to be proactive, not reactive. I mean, after the crime is done and you gotta solve it, you know, it's a little late. Being proactive and having a high level of visibility is proven to stave off crime, and it worked very well. We need these guys, and we need them now. I'm here to build and embellish and create an exemplary Department of Public Safety. That's a number one goal of mine. It's as high as housing or anything else on the roster. It's imperative. no matter what happens in the future, this community will begin to grow again in a positive direction. I love Kalkaska. And that may sound cliche, but I genuinely do love Kalkaska. I lived in California and I made a very righteous living in California. I was at the peak of my career, but my whole life, all I ever wanted to do, because the greatest memories I ever had in my life were of Kalkaska. And so regardless of what was taking place in California, I knew that after I had had children that this is where I wanted to raise them. And there was a reason for that. I liked the culture, I liked the people, and I think it had everything that I think California lacked. And so I moved back here. And when I got here, I was heartbroken at what I saw, because the image in my head, the Kalkaska that I knew as a child, didn't exist anymore. And so my objective from the moment I got elected to today has been to try and return Kalkaska to what I remember as a child, a place where great memories are made. That's been my goal from the moment I took this position, to try and fix. I don't know that the job really is ever done. There's always something else to fix. There's always something else broken. I know what it is that's broken here. I'm not afraid to point that out, whether it's comfortable or not. And I'm willing to devote the time, as has been proven, devote the time to those things that need fixed, and stick to it until it is. I'm not a quitter. I'll work hard just like I have been. Senator Boer, who's been in politics for decades, took me to the side and he said, "You're the hardest working village president I've ever known in my entire political career." And I was proud to hear that come from a man that I admire so much. So that's why.